Hello, everybody, and welcome to What's the Story podcast, episode 266. We're 7 years doing this, so you'd think by now we'd have a better intro, but sure, look, here we are. My name is Danny Murray.
And I'm Graham Merrigan.
Mero, how are you keeping, my friend?
I'm very good, very, very good, thank you.
Excellent. I've been made all the better by our guest this week, because every time we have him on, I end up leaving a little bit more intelligent.
Absolutely, and a very in-demand guest, because we tried to get him back since probably around the start of March, but he's far too busy for his new TV full-time gig, I suppose. Well, not full-time.
Danny won the ratings war, you know.
only marginally on penalties, I think it was, mate, on penalties.
And that is the voice of our one of our favourite guests. We always like to get him on every 5 or 6 months. Social historian and just all around sound human being, Donal Fallon.
How are you guys?
How are you?
Putting a lot of faith in the broadband here in Dublin 8, but we'll get through it.
You will indeed, man.
You've moved, have you? You've moved from Kimmage?
Yeah, well, I loved Kimmage. I loved being surrounded by millions of Shamrock Rovers fans, Graham, you know?
Yeah.
The four provinces up there. Oh, sorry, that was my sound. The four provinces seems to be the new Shamrock Rovers pub of choice.
That's right.
Dublin.
Yeah.
I would say that's in Crumlin, but the estate agents would say that's in Kimmage as well. Everything's in Kimmage now, apparently.
Right.
Yeah. As happened, I suppose, to a lot of people, just like the landlord sold up, it was time to move, and I was on the bounce around Dublin. So 5 months later, 6 months later, I found a place in Blackpits, which is right by St. Patrick's Cathedral. Really nice place. Nice to be so close to town, kind of in town, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say that's right in the heart of it, really.
Yeah, it's mad.
You could say there's loads of history around you now again.
Yeah, there's lots of pubs too. That's the problem. The balcony, you can see the spire of Patrick's Cathedral, which is really nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's nice to be amidst the city, isn't it? And one thing I won't miss is the traffic on the Lower Kimmage Road. But yeah, it was a great place to live for so long, Kimmage. Really enjoyed the buzz of the area. And plenty of green and white shirts.
Lovely.
Yeah.
You're on TV now, Donal.
You can always spot the gentrifiers, Graham. They were the vegetarians in the red and black shirt.
I love it.
Donal, as Mero said, you're a busy man these days. Obviously, Three Castles born and goes from strength to strength, and every time you release new episodes, it gets better and better. And the newer series you've just started, I think, moving house probably, or that played a part in you kind of taking a break from for a couple of weeks, but you're back in action now.
Yeah, it really doesn't help moving back into your parents' house with your partner, living on a inflatable bed, the front room, and trying to get childhood bedroom just won't do. And trying to record a podcast at home, a new baby next door, beautiful bouncing, new baby in the neighbour's house, and a 15-year-old dog with my parents, so it just wasn't working.
I was going to ask, the dog is still going strong?
Live, she's 15, but you know, you've probably heard on CNBC this week that cryptocurrencies died a death. One of the funny things is that Dogecoin, that dog, you know, remember the Doge meme?
Yeah.
That dog's still alive.
No way.
That dog's like 17 and blind over in Japan. So,
Jesus.
Dogs can go on for a long, long time. And yeah, Molly's still in the game at 15. Mentally, I don't think she's all there. I think she's lost her mind, but physically, still jumping around. So she wasn't supportive of my podcast efforts.
Did she like having you and your lovely fiance around? Yeah,
and that's the thing. You know, the loyalty of a dog, even when they're starting to lose their marbles at that age, like she's a total mutt, so they go on forever. They kind of have the best of what I remember the vet said. It's a long time since there was paperwork in that family. That's a good way to describe it. Like everything that was in the pound is there, but they go on forever months, and people pay thousands of euros for these pure breed dogs that are gone at 6 or 7 years of age. You know, you walk into Dogs Trust and find the strangest looking dog there, and you'll have it forever. But it was nice to be around her. Yeah, it was nice because you know it's the swan song years of her life, so it was cool to be with her. And
absolutely, man.
There was there's you know the way the president's dogs would history tell us that presidents have always had dogs?
Yeah, definitely. I think the Oris is such a kind of strange place and quite a lonely place, so people have always tended to have pets in it. There's a dog buried in the grounds of the Oris, but it predates a president. I think it might have been like Someone from the colonial service in days gone by, but there is a dog buried in the grounds of Arsenitron, which is mad.
No way.
Like, I've got relatives in Glasnevin and unmarked graves, and some fucking dog is a grave in the Phoenix Park. I find that amazing. But there is a dog buried up there, yeah. I suppose, like, I remember years ago reading an interview with May Robinson's son. He was kind of saying whenever you ordered a pizza, they would laugh at you on the phone and say, "Fuck off, no way." You'd say Oris and Uachtaráin, and they'd say, "No, it's not." They just hang up. I think you're franking them. So I think there's a degree of that, isn't there? If you live in Oris and Uachtaráin, it's a big house, but it probably gets lonely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would be terrible if, even ordering on Just Eat, it's getting cancelled, isn't it? The second the chipper sees that, they're like, yeah, no batter sausage going to the Ardis on Uachtaráin today, boys, get out of it. I'd say Michael D does eat a better sausage and chips. Curry sauce, I'd say he's a curry sauce.
Definitely. Sure, the man goes to an ATM.
This is it. But
all the good League of Ireland cuisine,
Absolutely. There is something.
Scran.
That word scran, Graham. Where does that is that an influence from across the water?
I'm not sure. There's a Twitter page called Footy Scran, and Rovers were featured on it recently. Actually, Dundalk were featured on it recently when someone asked for cheese chips, and they got a bag of chips and 2 slices of easy singles in the bag. So it's a very popular page, and Scran, as it's called, food that you get at football matches, are featured from all over the world.
Interesting. I've never heard the word before until that page appeared, and it was actually the very bag of chips with easy singles you mentioned.
Oh, it's very funny. Come here, Donal. As Danny was saying about the podcast, he obviously took a break with moving, and it's gone from strength to strength. Are you running out of topics yet, or is there just so much history in Dublin that you can go on forever?
That's a very good question. Like, I began doing a weekly history thing on Newstalk in 2013, right?
Hidden Histories, I love it.
With Ivan Yates every Tuesday morning. That was really scary. He's gone off now. I think he's been cancelled like 4 times or something. Has he?
I think he's a Fianna Fáil advisor now.
Yeah, and he still MCs events from time to time. So,
but no, he's a great broadcaster. I'll give him that. But yeah, I was on with him every like Tuesday morning. I'm still there, so I've had to come up with something every week on that. And I think the fact you could do that just proves that history is a never-ending subject, isn't it? A lot of the approach that I took to that, the history slot on the radio, I've kind of taken to the podcast, which is that quite a lot of them are quite topical. So when something happens in the news, whenever something's going on, I try and find the historic precedent for it. Okay. And to make the podcast kind of relevant to what's going on in people's lives now. But yeah, it's been like one of the really nice things about the podcast that's different from, say, the blog back in the day. So you can interview people pretty easily. So as long as there's interesting people to talk to, there'll always be an endless resource of stuff. But it's like, I used to love meeting up with people physically. So you'd meet them in the middle of town, and I know there's the sound of town, and people don't mind that, actually. People kind of are willing to listen to the background noise.
Now, the ambience,
yeah, the ambience. Sound of Zoom isn't quite as nice. People always sound like that little bit underwater, don't they? But it's also great in the sense that you're able to get people who might not live in the city, or you're able to have. It's easier for someone who's running around after 3 or 4 kids to go on Zoom with you. So it's been really about learning how to get the best interviews, hunting people, chasing people, as you lads know all about, and keeping topical. I mean, the latest one is with Joe Brady, who's a geographer, and he's just written a book on Dublin since the 70s. And that was really interesting because a lot of the stuff in that book, like, we're still living with,
Yeah.
A lot of debates that we're still living with, and stuff around suburbs and housing and all of that. So, yeah, I mean, as long as stuff keeps happening, there'll always be space for historians to go, oh, this happened before, or oh, isn't this a little bit like, and to dig back.
There's a kind of a weird sync moment here in terms of Dublin in the 70s, and as you said, like a lot of the stuff that they were dealing with 50 years earlier, they were dealing with similar housing issues, building issues, and that which your Brainstorm TV show touched on this week. And now here we are, 100 years on from that, 50 years on from the 70s. And it seems like a lot of the same conversations are probably being had at a lot of similar tables in government buildings.
Yeah, it's nuts, isn't it? I mean, when we're talking about the 70s, me and Joe, I thought was interesting. We touched briefly on Ballymun, because I know Ballymun was built in the 60s, but kind of by the 70s, people had a sense that it mightn't have been going as well as they probably intended. I find it mad, like talking to Joe, that was our one attempt at kind of high-rise building on that scale, high-rise housing.
Yeah, me too, yeah.
It strikes me as something that would really work here, and I'd be more than happy to live in a properly maintained high-rise apartment.
Absolutely. I was at a gathering recently, and a friend's brother returned home from Canada, and we were just chit-chatting about, it might be 10 years now that he emigrated, but he's now kind of relocated to London for a year or two with his partner. And I just said, would you ever consider coming home? And he said, how could I? I'm unemployable over here. I said, what do you mean? I forgot what he did. And I said, what do you do? And he says, I'm a skyscraper architect.
Oh, right, yeah.
So he'd never be able to come to Ireland because the building laws don't allow it to get above Liberty Hall.
Which is wild, isn't it?
Well, it's wild when we have a housing crisis.
Yeah, and you think, look, they were talking to Joe, like there were massive issues with Ballymun. I think probably the biggest issue was the lifts. So what I didn't know is that the company that were brought in for the lifts, they kind of specialized in office lifts. So these were like things that would be used, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. They were never intended to be like every day, all day, mothers and fathers up and down, prams all day. So like structurally, the place just wasn't done right. And everything that was promised on the ground, they promised this great kind of new town that would have everything people needed, that it would be able to function on its own, but still be near town. But then they delivered nothing. And really, it strikes me that like the failure of Ballymun wasn't the flats. It was everything else. They didn't provide for people's lives. They didn't maintain the lifts and the social isolation. And like, imagine if you had a child living way up in the 10th, 11th floor of a high rise and the lift was broken. You'd bring the pram down the stairs every day. You'd grow to hate the place pretty quickly too, wouldn't you?
Imagine you're a wheelchair user and you're living on the 15th floor.
Exactly. Well, that's another point. Like, how were people meant to live in public housing in wheelchairs? Even in the city, smaller schemes, I'm thinking of the 1950s flats in town, access issues there too. But Ballymun really should have succeeded. And it's mad to me now that was our one and only attempt at high-rise public housing. We just gave up on it. I think Grenfell in London also has influenced how people think about that. But again, it's a very specific failure,
Absolutely, yeah. The failure, the learnings of it are easily kind of achievable. Like when you look at cities like Vancouver and Tokyo and, all these huge high-rise, New York, like concrete jungle is, I just think it's crazy. Like you said, if you're going to build a residential tower and install a lift that's only workable through office hours, of course you're set up for failure.
It's nuts. I remember my dad telling me, like from when he was in the fire brigade, that when you had a fire in the Ballymun flats, you had a long time before it would even reach the other flats. So you'd had something like 40-45 minutes where it was well contained within that unit. But then everyone remembers that horrible image of the Grenfell Tower just going up in seconds, But that was because people decided they were too ugly to look at. That was like an aesthetic decision that was taken. Oh, we can't look at that public housing. We better make it nicer with lovely cladding. And then look what happened. So yeah, it seems people always point at these exceptional outliers and say, oh, it'll never work. But I think it's really something we need to be thinking about. Because we can't build out. Where can you build out? All we can do now is build up.
Housing crisis.
That's it, yeah. Urban sprawl can only sprawl so far. And eventually you run out of room, It can't go any further east, that's for definite, because it'll be in the water. So, and as somebody living in Laois, you don't want to go too far the other way either, I can tell you. So, it's crazy.
Is Laois a Dublin suburb yet in the sense that parts of Kildare and Meath and Louth are, it's just Dublin people out.
Yeah, but next to my air code, I put Greater Dublin area. So, but it's crazy though, because even at I've said it on this podcast before, the main reason we moved here is because we could afford to, it helps that Cubes has family here in terms of that 10 minutes up the road or whatever, but we don't have anything in Portlaoise as such that was, an anchor for us. We don't have friends here as such. There was nothing in the community that was like, that's what we're moving to. Because we couldn't afford.
Was here.
Yeah.
It's happening again this year. And if I open my kitchen window, I'll be able to hear who's playing. But at the same time, it's like, I'd have much preferred to have stayed close or ideally in Dublin, you know.
Yeah.
But if I wanted to, it'd have to be some fucking modern day tenement house situation that I'd have to be in. And it's just crazy to me that this is what we're dealing with, you know.
Well, this is the great debate that like everyone my age is having now, where it's like, oh, do you live in a apartment in Dublin City where you have to pay an annual management fee? Where does that money go? All the time I've lived in apartments, someone like hoovers the stairs once a month, twice a month, and that's the management fee. That's where it goes. Doesn't got anything else I can see. Do you want to live in an apartment? Can you raise a family in an apartment? I think you can, but not everyone agrees with that. And if you want a garden, which for a lot of people is a big deal, having a garden, that kind of now means leaving Dublin, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, even you saying that, like, have you ever been to Barcelona?
Yeah.
Like the residential apartments in Barcelona are just amazing. Like, and they have sprawling kind of environments. They've cafes at the bottom. You know, I remember being there a couple of years ago and thinking, geez, I would love to live here. I'd like, you're talking about gardens, and I know it's not, 10 feet long or whatever, but I mean, someone would live there. When you have 10,000 people homeless at the moment, I mean, anyone would live there.
Yeah, totally. But the thing about gardens, like, if I look out the window here, we don't have a garden, but I can see Patrick's Cathedral and Patrick's Park. You know that lovely park? Like, if you live in a city, I suppose you do have parks, so you do have recreational things. You just share them with everyone else.
Yeah,
it is nice to have your own garden, but that is the trade-off, I suppose, to live in a city. But yeah, I mean, if a mortgage is 3.5 times your income, you really struggle to see how anyone could be getting a house in Dublin in these rates. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
It's crazy.
It's from a history point of view as well, and we touched on this when we talked to Dave McWilliams there a while ago. But it's I don't know at what point it became a thing that Irish people rejected living above the shop or rejected living above the cafe or whatever, because that was that, and in cities across Europe and cities across the world, people do that. There's no problem living above a newsagent or whatever the case may be. But in Ireland, for whatever reason, COVID
really revealed that. And Frank MacDonald from the Irish Times back in the day, he lives in Temple Bar, right? Because in the 90s, when everyone was saying, oh, Temple Bar is going to be this great bohemian place and it's going to be full of art galleries and theatres. It still kind of is if you scratch hard enough. Yeah. They're just surrounded by shitty pubs. But now Frank kind of put his money where his mouth was and bought an apartment in Temple Bar and tried to live there. And he was talking to me on my pod about how when COVID hit, he realised walking through Temple Bar that no one lived there. That all the apartments around him were basically now Airbnbs and short-term lets. So we really paid for it during COVID, and COVID made me think about the city differently, because you have to ask, like, is a city for people that are going to live in it for 7 or 8 decades, or is it for people that are going to pass through it for 3 or 4 days?
Exactly. Is it for tourists or is it for people that live here?
And if Dublin during COVID felt to me like a city that bet entirely on the other horse, like.
Well, going back to Barcelona, they've managed to do a happy medium. Do you know what I mean? It's for tourists and also for the locals. I mean, that strip of residential apartments that I experienced, I couldn't tell you how cozy and how welcoming and how, I suppose I was attracted to, Barcelona held the Paralympics in '92, so they had to upgrade the infrastructure for people with disabilities. So I was attracted by that romantic kind of living of, oh my God, I don't have to pre-check. Everywhere is accessible. All the buses are accessible, everything. And then when you see all these gorgeous apartments, I was just like, why did this would be great. And like, I think it could work, but a lot of people do like to say, in Dublin or in Ireland, whatever, you can't have nice things because whatever. But that's down to, if there's social deprivation issues, that's down to upper management of whoever's doing it, not to the people.
Totally. And like, why does no one live on O'Connell Street? Why does no one live on Grafton Street? Very few people live on like South William Street. Like, all these streets in town should have communities on them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Donal, you were saying there when you were picking subjects for hidden histories, you look at what's happening now and seeing if there was precedent in decades gone by. Is there anything in terms of the current National Maternity Hospital issue that is kind of, it seems to be like, I think it's unfathomable that it's rearing its ugly head again in terms of how that's happening.
Yeah, that is a subject that's going to run and run. I'm always kind of trying to think of what the next big anniversaries are, because you need to be ready. People will ring you up and they'll be like, "Hi, today is the 100th anniversary of this thing. Can you come on the radio and talk about it?" You're like, "No, because I don't know." So I always have like a battle plan of what's coming, down the line. One of the things that's really interesting is we're kind of fast approaching the 50th anniversary of the death of John Charles McQuaid, the Catholic Archbishop who ruled Dublin with an iron fist for a long time. Irish society was McQuaid's society. That's coming up next year. And I've been thinking a lot about kind of church and state and the relationships there. And it's a really interesting subject. In the Dáil today, like I heard Patrick Tabine from Aintu said something that I thought was kind of interesting. He was like, there was horrible issues within all of these institutions. But at the same time, he said, look, when we were thanking people for their services to the nation during the pandemic, no one really mentioned the priests and nuns who, administered to the dying and buried the dead. And the relationship we have with religious orders is a little bit more complex, I suppose, than just weren't they awful. But yeah, it is. I mean, you want a secular society, don't you? I think it's friends of mine who are having kids now, like baptizing them out of no religious faith, but out of a fear that they won't get into a school.
That is a really interesting one as well, because I know a number of people who have taken that very approach. And I've kind of said, like you don't practice religion. You've said openly you don't believe in it. Like, straight up, I don't think I'll get my kid into a school unless they've had a bit of water splashed on them.
Was that real not gone with, like?
I think it's one of those things that on paper doesn't exist, but in practice does. And when it comes to things like where hospitals are located and the ethos of schools, we're not talking about a very long time ago here, that these weren't debates. 15 years ago there wouldn't be this debate. So it's strange. It's a society in massive transition when you think about it. It's a really messy issue, but it's the kind of thing we're going to have a lot more of, I think, in terms of the fabric of society.
How did McQuaid get such an iron fist over Dublin?
I mean, one of the tricky things about the past is that we always look back at it and say, well, the poor Irish people, they were so held down and repressed by the church. But actually, people were really religious, like most people were really, really religious. And you see things like in the 50s when there was a lot of communist repression in places like Hungary and Czechoslovakia. Like there were demonstrations in Dublin attended by 70, 80, 90,000 people. Even trade unionists who were like out in the streets marching against what they regarded as the Red Menace and in defense of Catholicism. Like people were really Catholic. And I suppose it takes the willing participation of the people, doesn't it?
Yeah.
For the church to gain the extent of power that they did in Ireland. So, I think we're always doing this, and I do, and everyone does it. We kind of look back on people in the past and presume they felt exactly like we do, but like on a whole host of things they didn't. And it was just it was a society where people were willing to give that much. And it's also like the other thing that no one ever really says, but isn't this a failure state as much as anything? Like what kind of state says, oh, we don't need to worry about the schools, or we don't really need to worry about the hospitals because the religious orders to do that? And like the state in the 20s really consciously.
Is there anywhere else that does that, Donal?
And we're talking pre-De Valera, like we're talking the first government of the state, Cosgrave and the Cumann na Gael government. They handed a lot of influence to the church. And for me, I would say that educating the children of a nation is the job of the state.
Absolutely, 100%.
It's not the kind of thing that the state. Other deeply Catholic societies would have had the same thing, but the extent of it here is really extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
That a newly elected government minister would travel up to Drumcondra and meet the Archbishop of Dublin. Like, why?
Is it like? And this is me purely putting on a kind of. I'm very much. I'm not a religious person at all, and when I think about it, I'm like. There's a convenience. I'm not saying people weren't religious. Obviously, they were religious, but I'd imagine there was a massive convenience as well. A very young state, no money, trying to get out there, totally. And then they realise, hang on a second, there's a big old organisation up the road that has a big pot of cash, and for a bit of influence and power, they'll take this problem away for us.
Yeah, and then the influence, like it shows itself in very weird ways. You look at the early suburbs that they built, like Crumlin. Crumlin is this massive. Crumlin and Cabra in the 30s are these massive endeavours. And in both cases, you have churches before you've got a school built.
Yeah.
You know, like if I was building a new suburb, I'd be like, okay, we need to build a police station. We need to build shops. We need to build schools, fire station. But the churches were amongst the first things built in those areas. It's really amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's incredible as well, because like a lot of churches that were built in the early days of this day, you walk into them, and even now, like they're stunning. To be fair, they are like some of the stuff in there. You know, the iconography in there, like everyone knows the stained glass windows and everything. But like from top to tail, the detail and the craftsmanship in them is, you know, and obviously it cost a fuck ton of money to do that. So, you know.
Yeah. And now you go into them, they're empty, they don't know what to do with them. So they're talking about taking down some of them. And even ones that came later, so there's a massive one at Finglas. Like it's just amazing. I think it's from the 50s. And it's just the congregation isn't there anymore. So they're just these weird reminders of the past.
Isn't there one of them? Is it? Oh, no, it's not Westmoreland Street. I can't remember. I was reading it during the week. During the week yesterday, that an old church is being basically now turned into shops. They're just going to convert it to shop.
There's a few in the city. Mostly all Protestant churches turned into different things. Like there's a pub, a church.
Yeah.
Where like Arthur Guinness is married, and you can just go in there and have there's a cemetery outside. That's a weird place, isn't it?
Was Arthur Guinness married there?
Yeah.
Wow.
You just like pop in and have a pint, and Wolftown Park is the old cemetery beside it. Like like what do you do with these buildings when their original purpose is past? You know,
is that another thing? Then, and I'm completely going on a complete sidebar here, but like cemeteries are all religious, obviously, in terms of that. But now, as we become more and more secular, we get this problem of, can you be interred there? And you know, now obviously the cost of a plot now was nearly, you know, a year's rent for
what they're doing now, though, is I was talking to a local funeral director last year, or maybe whenever it was, recent enough, and he was saying that the majority of deaths nowadays are cremations, and they're kind of humanist cremations, and what the graveyards are doing are now to try and make money. What the councils are doing now is they're offering these big walls, and it's like a shelf, and your family's.
Yeah, I've seen a few places
in it now, and it's a memorial wall of cremated ashes, so to speak. So that's what they're doing to counter that.
Well, I want to be cremated. My mom wants to be cremated. My brother wants to be cremated, and I said to my dad, "Do you want to be cremated?" He said, "I was in the front of for 30 fucking years." He said, "You're not pushing me into them."
Unbelievable.
So yeah, we have to buy a grave for him. That's a good
argument.
Go on, lads. That's a good argument against being cremated. So fair enough.
Yeah, go on, lads. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose maybe is it more environmentally friendly to be cremated? Maybe that'll be a swing for people in the future. If we, if we believe Elon, we can upload our consciousness somewhere and we can live on forever. Then we put the human body in
yeah, exactly. Into the compost bin. Yeah, you started off mentioning Dogecoin, and now we're gone to Elon Musk, the grand master of Dogecoin. I don't. Graveyards as well are fascinating places, though. I mean, like the stories that are contained within them are mad. But I think a bit of a morbid turn. But like, even just now, and like you were saying, Ryan, like the way we use them, the evolution of that in itself is interesting. And in 30, 40 years' time, historians who are chasing Donal and trying to be the next Donal Fallon, I reckon will be talking about this in a completely different way. Like
cemeteries are, I mean, during lockdown, there were one place that people really got to know well, because there tends to be one within everyone's kind of 5 km, you know?
Yeah.
And you walk around them and you discover really interesting things. And I think one of the mistakes that we make in cemeteries here, and I love Glasnevin Cemetery, and my late friend Shane McAmosh was the historian up there, and the guides up there now are all top class. Some of the best guides in the city that I know are working up there. And I think when you do tours of cemeteries, they tend to tell the biographies of the people that are buried there. And I've been on tours in cemeteries in England and France and stuff, just as a tourist. And you kind of stand at a grave, and they tend to tell you, "Oh, this guy lived a great life. Here's his life." But what they're very good at doing in Glasnevin instead is actually talking about the cemetery. So they talk like who made the headstones and, you know, the fashion of them. And you can kind of see the Celtic revival was gone because there are all these beautiful, like, you know, the Maid of Erin with her wolfhound and Celtic stuff and Irish script. And yeah, I think when you're walking through cemeteries, the most interesting thing is actually just looking around them themselves, not thinking about the people in them, but looking at the different headstones and how they changed over time. The graves that have those kind of cages over them because people were scared of body snatchers.
The mortal.
Yeah. Body snatchers thing is crazy.
The watchtowers in Glasnevin on each corner because of body snatchers. Like, that's mad, isn't it?
It's mental. It's absolutely mental.
Golden Bridge Cemetery in Inchcore, beside Richmond Barracks. That's a great one to walk around. They had guard dogs, Cuban bloodhounds.
Wow.
They were apparently like really good at stopping the body snatchers.
And people were robbing the bodies and selling them to doctors for autopsies, weren't they?
Like Trinity College and the Royal College of Surgeons. I think when you go to a cemetery like Glasnevin, and they're really good at it, but a lot of the other tours around the world aren't. There's no point standing over someone's grave and being like, here's what happened, here's everything that happened in this guy's life between 1710 and 18, whatever. I think really what you want to know is like, what's this place all about? And the stories are nuts, aren't they? Like when the body snatchers and the changing style of headstones. There's a lovely part in Glasnevin. There's it's a crypt, and all the names are familiar. You're standing there like, I know all these names. They're like, oh, these are the Italian chipper families. And that makes you think about migration and how these people who, a lot of these families came to Dublin around the same time, that they're even still, that they maintain the closeness, that they're even buried beside each other. Isn't that amazing?
Phenomenal.
That episode of your podcast was brilliant, by the way. The one where you covered it, Italians and chippers, and absolutely brilliant.
I'm starving after it. Yeah. Donal, when you go away, when you do your city breaks, like with your history hat on, do you seek out a cemetery tour straight away, or?
Well, I love going on tours somewhere else. It's like a busman's holiday, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't like going on tours in Dublin because I think people get a little bit freaked out if they know you. Yeah. And it's kind of they're like, oh shit, you know, they worry about what like you correct them or something. I mean, one, that's incredibly rude, and two, generally, like, no, you wouldn't, and you presume you're there to learn yourself, you know. Yeah. But I love when I'm abroad. I love going on tours, and sometimes they're really cheesy. If you're ever in Edinburgh, like, Jesus, the tourist industry in Edinburgh is a vision of what Dublin will hopefully never become.
Right.
It's all these awful ghost tours, and
Luckily
luckily for you, Graham, you'll never have to endure them because you're basically moving through the underground city.
Thank God, yeah.
And, it's all like people jumping out at you and stuff like that, you know.
But there is underground tunnels in Dublin, isn't there? What's the story with that? Would that be ever open for tourism?
There's lots of them, yeah. There's that new show on about the Liffey on RTE. And I think in the first episode, they went into some of those underground tunnels. It's like the Poddle mostly flows under Dublin, you know? Yeah. So there is a city below the city. But yeah, the Italian stuff was, going back to that, that was such a great story. And those families, so many of them are still here. There was a great poet, Vinnie Caprani. I did an episode on him not too long ago. He was a Dublin Italian blood printer, but he wrote a lovely poem about Dublin called The Changes. I got it up there because it captures a lot of what we're just talking about today. Stroll around your city streets, learn your city's story, try to spy the ancient stones, those granite glints of glory, or the little stones that seem to hold all we once held dear before the carpet-bagging fucks make them disappear. It's not brilliant.
Very good.
It's in a city where so much seems to be disappearing at the minute. But he was a real keeper of the flame of the Italian story. He looked like an extra in The Sopranos, but he looked like a little Italian gangster. And he was full of great stories about Italian-Irish life. And it's mad, these, like, they still have a social club, and they still play the great Italian love up in the mountains, which is soccer, calcio. And they're still there. Isn't that a testament that those names are still in every Dublin suburb?
Oh, unbelievable. But there's no chippers in Italy, is there?
No, that's the mad thing. That's what's so. But then the Chinese food that is not Chinese food.
Chinese food, yeah.
When the Vietnamese people were escaping from the war there, they were called the boat people. And kind of like the Ukrainians today, they ended up everywhere, and quite a lot of them ended up here. The Vietnamese, they made their made their living by selling so-called Chinese food in suburban Dublin, you know. Yeah. And people often remember these like little vans with Vietnamese names selling so-called Chinese food, but it became part of our cuisine. I think our understanding of what's an Italian fish and chips and what's a Chinese takeaway, but really more Irish than they are Chinese or Italian.
Absolutely. I think you know the way the Vietnamese, the boat people, they came to Ireland because obviously the war. Was there any specific reason why an influx of Italian people came to Ireland to open chippers?
They were all living up in Little Ship Street, which is on the back of Dublin Castle.
Right.
Around the kind of by between kind of Dublin Castle and Patrick's Cathedral. And they were mostly those Italians really working class. So they were living in tenements, they were living in pretty rough accommodation. There were some there were kind of middle class Italian migrants who worked in like church stucco work, you know, guys who work with their hands making stuff. Right. And you see some of that in churches and in kind of private homes. But for the most part, yeah, they were just working class Italians on the move, and every major city they called it the Italian colony, and that's something they got really good at: ice cream and fish and chips. And it's funny because when you read the newspaper reports back then, like the health and safety authority of the day or whatever, were always in and out of the Italian houses.
Really?
Can't sell that ice cream. That's totally unfit for human consumption. But that was the very beginning of it. It was just like Italians living in tenement Dublin that were having a go at it. And this guy Giuseppe Servi, him and his wife have a little hand cart on Pierce Street, and they say that like her English was quite bad and his English was quite bad. They just learned how to say one and one. You know, do you want one of these and one of these? Fish and chips. And there's still a place, like it's still parts of Dublin today where people would say, can I have a one-on-one?
Yeah.
Still have chippers now. And it was just these Italians were struggling with English. So it's mad. You know,
that's amazing.
Yeah, and they're so close-knit. But if you do anything on the Italians in Ireland, you'll always get the next day your inbox is just all these great names that you recognise from over the doors of chippers. Because they're so happy that people commemorate that history and talk about them.
What it is, they're enshrined in communities around the entire country, and it's something that like I'd never really thought about it in a way. And then listen to that episode or whatever, I started to think about it, and even like around the borough where we're from, you know what I mean? You've got the McCartys, you've got the Cassonis, you've like there's so many of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're enshrined in the community.
If you go to London, you get different migrant tastes, different migrant foods. So in London, if you go to Brixton, like really good Jamaican food, loads of it. We don't really have that at all. We never had a Jamaican migrant community. It'd be interesting to see Nigerian food. There's a lot of that in London. Very little of it. Like there were one or two places in Moore Street over the years, but not much. So it's hopefully like, you know, the newer migrant communities, hopefully eventually we'll see some of that on offer too.
Listen, some of that Ukrainian food, man, my missus is Russian, and there's like Ukrainian in their family and all that kind of stuff. So there's a kind of a mongrel version of many traditional cuisines. And I'm telling you, if some of that stuff starts to become popular over here, I'll be all the happier for it, because there's dumplings and soups and there's so many of those things, and just like, yes. It's the classic thing of just carb, meat, sauce. And you can't go wrong. You cannot go wrong.
Food is a very it's a very comforting thing. Two, it's a sitting down to have a meal with people it's a nice routine, and it gives people a great sense of identity. And what I always thought one of the great tragedies of the direct provision system was that in most centres people didn't have the ability to make food.
Yeah.
You know, so would outsource that, and you'd have to eat like crap chicken nuggets and chips every day. And these are people who love food and who are great at making food and could probably make very good food for less money than some firm is being served.
Absolutely.
Being paid to serve chicken. So yeah, I mean, if you gave people the ability to share the foods in their native cuisine with people here, they'd love to do it, wouldn't they?
That's it. And I think we've become quite snobby, and I'm one of them. I don't eat meat on the bone. I get constant slagging for not eating chicken wings. I'm the fella that orders boneless wings when I'm out with friends, and I get constant abuse over it. But
rightfully so.
But those communities, they would use cuts of meat that we would look down on, but they're so full of flavour, they're so delicious, and like that. You know, a big pot of whatever they be making probably costs a tenner to feed 100, whereas we're sitting there with our fucking free range organic chicken breasts that cost €12 for a pack of 3, like, you know.
Exactly. In my job as well, like we're very multicultural workplace, but we have an international day every year, and all the cuisines that just come together, and the office is transformed into a farmer's market with international delicacies, and it's just amazing. Like, and like you said, Danny, they're using cut of meat and they're laughing at us.
Yeah.
They're like, and you're eating it with rice, and they're like, "Holy shit, the flavors out of this!"
Yeah,
you know,
it is. It's but that's something brilliant about it. You kind of said there, Donald, that thing of getting to break bread with people. There's something about that I think it's kind of slipped away in Irish culture. I think it's not as people tend to eat dinner now, like watching the telly, or, you know, families don't sit around the table as often as they used to and do that kind of breaking bread and having that ritual. Like,
there was a thing called Our Table a couple of years ago, ourtable.ie, and they worked with people in direct provision who made food from their own kind of backgrounds. I remember the hot sauce that they made. You get it into places around town. It was absolutely explosive. I love hot sauce. This was real hot sauce. It was great. And it was just a great initiative. You know, it gave people a sense of ownership over their own lives, and something. I think people love being able to offer something to other people. You know, you might have been fleeing a war, or you may have come from something very difficult, but to be able to say, this is what we eat, this is what we like, and to share that with Irish people, I think that was a really liberating thing for people. And food it's one of those great things that if someone makes a meal, the pride that they take in sharing that, you know, and having people around their table, it's something that, you know, no one should be denied really if they want to do it. It's great.
Absolutely, yeah. If ever you just come over to my gaff, lads, I'll make you chicken fajitas.
Yeah,
the great Irish tradition, the great Irish tradition of chicken fajitas. Well, I know that's not how it's said. Relax.
Yeah.
There's people out there who go mad at that. Or if you say jalapenos, that's not how you say that. All right, relax.
Yeah, jalapenos.
People are mad.
In Dundrum Shopping Centre, I heard they call jalapenos.
Oh God.
Whatever that may be.
That put you off asking for them on your sandwich.
If you go down Moore Street, like the problem with Moore Street is designed to fail now. And what I mean by that is everyone is on a short-term lease.
Yeah.
Does well, finds it impossible to establish any kind of base there. So I don't know if you guys remember the Paris Bakery years ago. Amazing little kind of cafe/restaurant on Moore Street, doing some of the best sandwiches I've ever had in town. Well, he was saying, like, we're packed out the door every day. We're super busy, but we can't get a permanent lease. You know, we don't know if we'll be here in 3 months. And that's a problem, I think. If you're a migrant and you're not here that long and you don't have security, a tenure, you don't know that if you open your little Nigerian restaurant on Moore Street, you can't guarantee you'll be there in 6 months. So why would you put anything into it? Why would you invest in it?
Exactly,
yeah. Fair point.
What security is that like?
Yeah, people say, oh, Moore Street, you go down and all the shops look crap and all the signs are ugly. And so, of course they are, because people can't guarantee they're going to be there in 6 months. So why would they invest in a sign painter? You know?
Yeah,
I never knew that, to be honest. That's disgraceful.
Yeah, if I had a 6 month rolling lease, I wouldn't be planning money into making the shop look nice either. But yeah, the potential like on that street, I think is amazing.
The potential in Dublin is amazing, and it's just are we ever going to reach the potential?
Well, like the potential, when I was in Berlin there last September, they have a street called Kantstraße, and you walk down Kantstraße, every kind of migrant food you could ever want is there. Like literally everything you could ever imagine. I wonder, like, funny, back in the DDR, back in East Germany, they had fraternal relations, you know, with the Vietnamese people, and it meant a lot of Vietnamese people. One of the only Western countries they could go to was East Germany. You know, one communist society to another. There were loads of Vietnamese people. So Vietnamese food's a real part of life there. But just incredible top standard Vietnamese food. And I was thinking, like, why isn't there a Kantstraße in Dublin? Why isn't there a street in Dublin where you can get good quality migrant food? Parnell Street, kind of, but it suffers from the same problem that, you know, the future of it is so uncertain.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, should Parnell Street be Chinatown? I'm like, actually, if you go down it, it's way more diverse than that.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
I think kimchi, which is Korean.
Yeah. Korean food has become
sensational.
And there's more and more of it available popping up now. There's places that do all the kind of the Korean chicken and just the spices and everything. And like you were saying, like Donald, the hot sauce and whatever, the different sauces of like in some of those Asian food. Oh my God, I'm lepping. I'm lepping.
Yeah, and we don't have the culture of the kind of street food here that they have in Berlin or in New York City, where it's literally a window, when you order the food out, and that's a good affordable business model for people.
Yeah, we saw the emergence of food trucks during the pandemic, but I think they're kind of disappearing though as soon as we emerge out of it.
Yeah, they depended on the boredom of people, didn't they?
Yeah.
But it did become a thing because there was nowhere open and it became a thing. I remember myself in Cubes a couple of times when, geez, look, there's one there that a load of people are at the saying, brilliant. Come on, we go for a drive. And that's what we do. We go and wherever this one is parked up, we'd go and try it.
Kawagi Bites was one of my favourites.
Bites by Kwangi, yeah, that was one.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, the chicken one at the Walkinstown roundabout was great.
Cluck Cluck.
Yeah. It was worth risking your life on the Walkinstown roundabout for.
Yeah. I'll tell you, the one that was the unsung hero there was at the back of Cluck Cluck. So you'd have to go back to the roundabout, risk your life, but go up the other exit. There was a little dumpling place up there. And it was fucking unreal. I don't know if it's still there or not. I'm sure somebody will tell us. I
can't believe we're getting nostalgic for the food trucks of the COVID-19 pandemic.
I tell you, wait till 2030, lads. All we'll be wishing for is an old Korean chicken burger from a van and a few fucking bits of dumplings from some other van.
It's like the driving through the Champs-Élysées, isn't it? Going to Walkinstown. If you rent a car in Paris and you have insurance on it, the insurance doesn't count in many cases at the Champs-Élysées.
Yeah.
Like it's considered so bad and so dangerous, it's no man's land, when you're on it. And Walkinstown roundabout, if you get stuck on that thing, it's not nice.
I've never been stuck in a rush hour, thank God.
Oh God,
it's a type of chaos I'd rather take 10 minutes longer and avoid it, to be honest with you, like. But sometimes all roads lead through Walkinstown roundabout.
The great story I heard from, I think someone told me this in the queue for Cluck, Rich Allen. They're saying about this guy, Cullen. I think Cullen was he actually Chicken Cullen? Or was his nickname? I might have to look that up. I thought this guy was having me on, trying to see if he could get me to tell an outrageous lie in the podcast. But it was actually a man who refused to give up his house when they were constructing the Walkinstown roundabout. And for years, he was in the middle of it. His house was still there.
What?
Jesus.
It was kind of like the house and up,
Yeah.
But I wouldn't sell his house.
Is there any pictures of it?
Yeah, there is one. There actually is one. I'll see if I can. Yeah, I'll pop it in the chat if I can find it. But he just fought on and refused to go.
That's amazing.
Like, why would you want to wake up to that every morning? But I suppose it was.
There are some people who are so stubborn, though. John, they'll massively inconvenience themselves for this outrageous moral victory that in truth is just hurting themselves. Like
Michael Chicken Cullen was his name.
Nickname Chicken because he has to run across 5 lanes.
Did he open up a food truck?
Chicken Cullen lived in a house with his sister Dolly that was located where the infamous roundabout now sits. He refused to sell his house to the Dublin Corporation in 1950, so they built the roundabout around the house. One night in 1971, the 86-year-old Cullen quietly moved to a house that had been built for him across the road, ending a 21-year dispute with the corporation. Isn't that brilliant?
That is amazing.
That's amazing.
That is. And see, it's the people, isn't it? It's the people that make Dublin.
Yeah.
And Chicken Cullen is a man who now will go down in my memory as a legend.
Maybe Cluck was a form of commemoration for Chicken Cullen, who knows? But yeah, those are mad times when you think back on them now, and just remember when 2km became 5km and it felt like the world just opened up.
Stop, yeah.
Mental, isn't it?
Going into town and being like, this city will never be the same again. It was so surreal when you were wondering how much of it was. You remember the Christmas, like there was Paddy's Day decorations. It was Paddy's Day. There were like Paddy's Day decorations up like 20 months later on things in town. It was just surreal. It was absolutely
it was a bizarre, and I'm not saying this to knock guards. They were in an impossible position in many ways, but like that, 2km was in, you're going to the shops, you're being stopped by a guard and he's asking you, where are you going? And do you have to go to buy bread and pasta? Or and you're like, yeah I do, man. Yeah, like but like, and I'm not saying that to knock them, I get it, they but just the mere fact that we were being asked that kind of stuff.
Well, I know a guard, and I know for a fact he hated asking the question.
I'd say so. And in fair, I never had.
He was at a checkpoint one night, and Tony Houlihan rocks up. Where are you going, Tony?
God,
There's Tony, an illegal rave down the beach.
Yeah.
But,
we all remember that amazing piece of cinema. I think it's one of the greatest things I've ever seen in the movie is Cillian Murphy in the opening minutes of 28 Days Later.
Oh,
yes. Yeah.
Walking around deserted London, you know.
That was like you going to Grogan's during the snow that time.
By trekking the snow. Yeah, it was just surreal, wasn't it? Walking around town, you're like, geez, will this place ever be the same again? It was just absolutely phenomenally strange. But it's funny how quick things came back to some extent, you know. But it was mad. God.
But the history of pubs were affected by it because a lot of them were decimated.
Yeah, and that was the funny thing, I suppose, that like the likes of Grogan's and the Palace and the pubs that run on the telly a lot, like they were always going to bounce back fine. But apparently in rural Ireland, you really see it now. And even when we were filming Brainstorm, we did quite a lot of traveling into different places because we didn't want it to be like, here's a lot of academics who live in Dublin. We wanted it to be like, this is Irish academia across the country. So we went through, like, we were in Ballinrobe and Mayo, we were in like little rural towns and even rural cities. Like, once you get out of Dublin, you can actually see the impact of the pandemic very clearly. It's a lot of small, medium businesses just gone around the country.
There is, even down here, you know, you walk down Main Street in Portlaoise and you see the scars of the pandemic there. And it's, look, I think we're all in a better place now, but I think there are some people who will carry that weight with them for a long time. Like,
absolutely. Donal, you're talking about Brainstorm there. Well, tell us a bit about that before we let you go.
Yeah, so Brainstorm is this like section of the RT website where they academics kind of write about what's going on in the world and try and respond to the world and what's happening in it. And it's not like clickbait. It's not like 10 things you need to know about Vladimir Putin, or, you know, I hate clickbait. Clickbait drives me up the wall.
You won't believe what Vladimir Putin named his dog.
You won't believe what happened next. But it's a website, I suppose, that's... So, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to open it up and tell you exactly what's on it now. And that'll give you a sense of what it's all about.
Amazing. While you're doing that, we'll say it is, the episodes are available on RTE Player.
Yeah, so at the moment, like the newest articles on it, Walk This Way, why Irish cities are giving way to pedestrians. You know, Capel Street's just been pedestrianised.
Yeah.
There's a piece on why are we doing that and how has that worked around the world? Does it work? What's behind the crash in cryptocurrencies? You know, Finland and Sweden, their NATO membership, what will that mean for Europe? So it's all about people who are working in these various things, trying to explain or give a sense or give an opinion on what's happening in the world. It's a really nice idea. And it was a kind of bold idea for TV because that stuff's very topical, you know?
Yeah.
So you had to move really quick. So that show was made really recently. In fact, like I was doing a voiceover for one of them yesterday.
Right.
That's like going out next week. So it was really like, okay, we have to make this show quick, that the stuff is still fresh. It was really nice. Some of this, like there's a piece in it that will just boil your blood, boil your piss, and you'll want to jump out the window. It's about postcodes and what they mean for property prices. That's on it next week.
That'll infuriate. Yeah.
And did you enjoy making it?
Yeah, except when the stuff annoyed me like that, you know.
Yeah.
We met up in a house in Terranure. I would say Kimmage, but daft that would say Terranure. You know that song "Three Lovely Lassies from Kimmage"? There are three lovely lassies from Kimmage. I was thinking, like, God, if the estate agents had their way, it'd be three lovely lassies from Terranure. But we're in this house, and it was a gorgeous house. It was a really, really nice house, but it was in Kimmage. But it had sold as it being in Terranure. I'm kind of talking about what does that mean? You know, what does it mean when you move a house from one postcode to another? And I thought air codes would have solved this, but actually, people registered their own air codes. So a lot of people have like really strange air codes. Yeah, like, but this Dublin 6 versus Dublin 12, Dublin 8 into Dublin 10, all this stuff across the city. It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. It's mad, and it's
maths on it. It was infuriating.
It is. It's and Kieran Mulqueen, the man behind the Crazy House Prices social media account, and we've had him on the podcast a couple of times. He's brilliant at calling those things out. I do love when he calls out an estate agent for that exact kind of shithousery, where he's like, "This is it on Google Maps, and it clearly is Kimmage." It's you know.
There was a house in the Ranch. One of my recent episodes was about Thomas Kinsella, a great poet. He was from the Ranch, and the Ranch is like when you come under the bridge. out of Inchicore, you're going into Ballyfermot. The ranch is just there, and it's Dublin 10. Now, arguably, it actually is Inchicore, but it's in this no man's land of Ballyfermot, Inchicore. It predates Ballyfermot as a suburb. So I would say it's debatable where it is. It's kind of no man's land. It's just a ranch. It's between Ballyfermot and Inchicore, but it's Dublin 10. And there was a house on daft.ie sold as Dublin 8, but in the picture of the house, on the fucking house, was a street sign that said Dublin 10. So
the pain in the hole,
something to Dublin 8. It's like an Orwellian lie. It's like, yeah, I know there's a picture in the ad that says Dublin 10, but we're going to say it's Dublin 8 anyway.
Yeah.
And that's just mad to me. And like, I don't care if a house is in Dublin 8 or 10. You know, I care about where it is in terms of the distance from things and if that's convenient to me. But it's mad to me that there's so much of it on daft now. And to meet these statisticians and for them to explain it, and they've got the hard data and they've looked at like exact same houses, sometimes houses built at the same time by the same architect, and they sell for madly different prices because of a postcode. It's just mad.
That's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy.
There's no talk of National Treasure coming back.
Yeah, the lads who made National Treasures, fair play to them. I'm delighted for them. They sold the rights for it in loads of different countries.
Brilliant.
So
well, we were saying that why would that not work anywhere else?
Exactly. It would work anywhere else, and they've done it. I think Sweden, I think, have done it, and a couple of different countries, like several different countries have done it. It was a great idea, wasn't it? And when it went out on telly, like if anyone who didn't see it, it was basically a show where we asked people to bring along artifacts they thought were important in telling the story of Ireland, that we talked about them, and we didn't value them. So, like, yeah, if you want to value things, like go on the Antiques Roadshow, or go on eBay and see what it's worth. We were like, what's it worth as a story? What's it worth emotionally? And then the Irish Times reviewed it, and they called it the anti-capitalist Antiques Roadshow. I was like, thanks, that's great.
Yeah.
But other people were angry. Like, some of the reviews were like, I don't know what that stuff was worth. Like, that was the point.
But is there no talk of it coming back?
No, I would have loved to bring that back. I thought it would have been great. As we were saying before, I would have loved to bring it to Liverpool. I would have loved to bring it to Manchester, to London, to do a British version of Irish.
I can't believe it's not being commissioned.
I loved it. And yeah, that was just mad. That was great.
If they're after selling the rights to it worldwide, of course there's an appetite for it.
Do it again. Again.
Absolutely. Yeah. Never say never, lads.
It was great. And you know what? It was a chance to use that archive. Like, the archive is so rich. And people love archive, don't they?
Absolutely.
Everything's more romantic and black and white, isn't it?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Old archive footage and photos, and like your man, I don't know if you follow him on social media, Rob Cross.
It's amazing, Rob. Yeah, Rob was in Brainstorm. Rob is in Brainstorm next week. He's the first item.
Oh, very good.
We met up and he was kind of talking me through the process of how he does what he does. Amazing guy, Rob.
I bought his book for Christmas, and my God, it's just amazing.
And you know what's cool about Rob? Like, he prints the black and white original beside it.
Yeah.
So people get a bee in their bonnet and say, oh, you're changing the past and you're vandalizing history and da-da-da. Rob would say, no, I find this entertaining. I'm giving my interpretation of the past.
Yeah.
People enjoy it. I'm not saying that's the definitive image, because it isn't. The black and white image is the historical source.
Shouldn't need to explain that though, should he?
Yeah, but people just like to nag on things that are popular sometimes. And I think that's what that was about. But it was the way he gives you the original. I think that's great. Because, yeah, sometimes people get it wrong. You know, they get the shirt colors wrong or whatever. But like Rob was telling me, he goes on Google Street View and he actually looks at bricks. Like, so if he has say it's like Rat Mines 1890, you know, it's a very good chance that a lot of what's in that picture is still there. Places that haven't changed all that much. And you get the Street View up today and you get a sense of the colors. That's the level of research that he does. So Rob deserves every success. I think he's like, the thing about those colorization images, they get people interested in history, and that's always a good thing, isn't it?
Big time. Absolutely brilliant.
Donal, but before we let you go, there's one thing I want to talk to you about, and as you are a social historian, and you know, we've often talked about things when we had you on that divided Irish society and whatever. And the Irish Civil War, now, not the one that's marking the centenary this year, but the one that's 2 decades old this year, Keane and McCarthy. 20 years.
God, isn't it?
20 years since Saipan. And it's still, to this day, there's still mates of mine that we can't talk about it because we'll kill each other. You know?
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. 20th anniversary, and it's around the corner. It has to be around the corner.
It is around
only a couple of weeks.
You know what? I remember the television being wheeled into the school gym to watch those games.
Yeah.
The euphoria, and that was their first kind of great. So one of my earliest memories as a child is painting curbstones in Ballyfermot in '94.
Brilliant.
And the crap murals that went up all over Dublin. And I think there might be there's apparently remnants of some of them still around the country.
No
These
way.
Dodgy USA '94 murals. But I remember that. Yeah, I remember the curbs being painted. But you're too young to have any sense of it. I would have been 5. But 2002, Jesus, that's so living, isn't it? In your memory, like if there were school kids.
Awful time.
I'll never forget the RTE coverage. They really used that song, that feeder song. All by myself, was that the song?
Yeah.
Do.
Oh yeah.
All by myself. Yeah.
He's
That will always be part of
trigger.
my memory. And recently, we were out in the Lash and we were talking about the World Cup, and someone put that on Spotify. I was like, yeah, that's Robbie Keane doing the cartwheel. That's the both shot into the camera.
That's Damien Duff doing that.
Oh, it was incredible. The memory of that time. But at the time, I think as kids, we all thought Keane was the comic book villain,
Yeah.
But in retrospect, after things like Champagne Football, and when you have a better understanding of how Irish football is dysfunctional, sometimes not by accident, you sympathise more and more with Keane. But Keane is such an abrasive is the wrong word. He's most people are not as honest as Keane is. And he doesn't do the dance around civility that most people do, where you don't really say what you mean. You try and say what you mean, but in something softer. Right? He just says what he means.
That's it. And I think it's amazing because he captured that himself in terms of his no-nonsense style. And then when it came to someone like Niall Quinn, who he christened Mother Teresa, because Niall was always trying to appease, and he was always trying to find that nice way of putting something across. And Keane had no time for it, and Mother Teresa, Niall Quinn. So, but
there's a website called soccer-ireland.com. Seriously ugly website. It's kind of like, remember the days of MS Paint and everything. It's but it's a very important website, and they have the entire interview that Keane gave to the Irish Times.
Yeah,
in 2002.
Was it Tom Humphreys?
It was Tom Humphreys. Yeah. Don't mention the war, but Roy's points in that are just absolutely amazing, and the whole thing is up there to read in full. What an amazing! That's hard to believe. It's 20 years.
Yeah, you have to do a podcast on it.
That's really frightening, isn't it?
It is. And I think it's one of them things that it's so fresh in our memories, and yet the 20th anniversary has kind of crept up on us in a way,
Yeah.
And but it's just when I was thinking about things to chat about, I was like, you know what? Mero definitely has an opinion on. Yourself and Graham talked about it over the years and whatever, but it's like there's so much in this. And when you think about, I can remember TV clips of people talking about husbands and wives not talking to each other, brothers and fathers and sisters, families literally at the kitchen table being like, no, he's in the Keane camp. I don't have nothing to do with him, Dunphy appearing on TV wearing a Cameroon toy or something, wasn't he? He was wearing the toy that was colored a Cameroon. Just
Dunphy was a pleb back then, as well. He would have been.
Yeah. But Dunphy was the national villain when he was criticising Jack Charlton during the '94 World Cup. And the thing I find amazing about that was you could buy T-shirts making fun of Dunphy on the O'Connell Bridge the day after. He did something stupid. Who was running that operation?
Yeah, what printing T-shirt printing? Where are they now?
Dunphy recovered from all that. I mean, he remained a national figure. I wouldn't say icon, but he remained a national figure. The Keane
definitely in the conversation. He got a show. The last word was Eamon Dunphy.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. It's so long since I read that interview, but I pulled it up there. One of the last questions is amazing. You hate that lovable Irish thing, don't you? And Keane says, I suppose so. I accept it. I'm as Irish as anybody, but this has been going on for years. Training facilities, travel arrangements. It's easy to pass the buck. You got to prepare properly, though. It's hard enough as it is. If I open my mouth every time there's something wrong, I need my own newspaper. Not brilliant. Just such a Roy Keane thing to say.
But he was vindicated in the Genesis report as well.
Oh, he was totally vindicated in the end, wasn't he? Totally in the end. But I suppose it was a real lesson in how figures are viewed based on how they talk or how forward they are. You know, Keane was just regarded as very forward.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Donal, do you ever think you'll do a live show with the podcast?
I'd love to. Yeah, that'd be great. There's a podcast I really like, and you lads probably like it too. Talking Bollocks.
Oh
yeah. I listened to that a bit, and they're doing one in Vicar Street. I was thinking, yeah, that could work. You know, it's nice to do live shows. You put a lot of faith in a lot of things going right on the night, don't you? That you can't control. God bless you.
Well, that's it.
You would be great in the Sugar Club and have a few historians in talking.
Yeah, you got to think about who you invite. Yeah, but it would be good, wouldn't it? It'd be nice. It'd be nice, and getting everything back offline now is just because we live in a weird. COVID's not gone, like, you know, it's still ticking away there, and you do have to cancel things sometimes at the last minute, and you're nearly shocked now when someone texts you, "I have COVID." You're like, "Oh, that thing." Like you're a hipster, like, oh, that was so 2 years ago, but like it's still part of our lives, and I think we need to just get back to full-time normality, and doing live pods is a good way to do that, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, if you do decide to do one, tickets 1 and 2 are sold right here, my friend. But Donal, as always, man, it's great catching up.
It's like Pam, that'd be great.
That's well, I mean, look, Paul Howard would do it. He wrote a book, Gaffers, a brilliant book on it, you know, and I'm sure there'd be plenty of other sports brains out there that'd be more than willing to, because I think there'll be a lot of it anyway. I'd say there's going to be pieces in Sunday papers and everything now over the next couple of weeks.
They've already started.
Have they already started?
Yeah.
Like it's
there'll be commemorative badges and
yeah, exactly.
That's where you come in. Are you doing the shop again?
No, this awful thing happened called hyperinflation. You may have noticed it.
Right.
It's the reason everything costs a fortune now.
Yeah.
Except the bus, which is now cheaper, which is lovely.
Yeah.
But everything else is costing an absolute bomb now, and just the cost of like.
I love that shop.
A shirt or a badge is just so mad now that it's even postage has gone up, and that's not the postage fault, but the cost of everything is through the roof. So it just became more and more stressful and less rewarding. But I'd love to go back and do the odd thing because it was great fun.
The most frustrating part about that website was going onto it and seeing sold out.
I love doing weird little things that no one else would make, you know, like a commemorative Rick's Burgers jumper. Like, who else is going to make?
I've never had a Rick's Burger.
Did you not?
Oh, God. It was the original Smash Burger, which is now very much on trend.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were the origin of the Dublin Smash Burger. But it's so weird again. Like, if you walk around town, there's a lot of stuff like that gone, isn't there?
I haven't been in town at an hour where you'd crave that kind of food after a couple of creamy points or whatever. But I Rick's, Charlie's, Pinhead, all those kind of places. I assume Charlie's and Pinhead Pizza are still going strong, at least.
Yeah.
Charlie's Zaytoon is up there.
Zaytoon, oh my God.
One of the best kebabs in the world, I think. I love Zaytoon. Bring any kebab purist there, you know. I think it can hold its own.
Yeah. It can. I would give me left arm for the Zaytoon right now. My God. No, give me Zaytoon.
I used to be in a WhatsApp group where fellas reviewed kebabs. The Department of Health would shut it down if they knew. But the consensus in the group was, right, that the best kebab in Dublin was passion for food.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, passion for food is very good.
Sensational.
It's about 2 minutes somewhere. I'm sitting at a minute. So that's a thought that's crossed my mind there. But it's unbelievable. And those guys are Kurdish. And there's always a little difference, you know, depending on where the people in the kebab shop are from. They do really, really nice kind of desserts as well.
Yeah.
I didn't know they were Kurdish.
The clava, you know, gorgeous.
Baklava,
yeah. They do really nice stuff there. So that's always tempting me on the walk home. That's too close for comfort.
Treat yourself, man. Treat yourself. But Donal, as always, man, it has been a pleasure, and continued success with Three Castles Burning. And look, if National Treasure gets brought back, even better again. And Brainstorm, congrats on that as well. It's been great.
It's been great watching you on telly. It was great. Yeah, I really. It's very meta, isn't it? Like, we don't have a television here. It's not that we're making some great political point with television. I'll get one eventually. Television, man, it's evil. It's like haven't had space to store one or the time to buy one. But when I was watching that at my folks' house, it shouldn't work as well as it does. Watching people on telly.
Yeah, it's chewing gum for the brain in the best possible way.
What an idea! It's great.
But we all react, and then you react to the people reacting. It's nice. And thank you, by the way, for teaching me the history of the Schlitter. I didn't know I needed to know that information, but I felt all the better.
What an amazing man! Oh man,
unbelievable!
What a great. There's a man who needs a podcast. What a great accent. Come on. Yeah. The second generation Irish in England, they all speak those kind of lovely notes.
Yeah.
I just thought it was great. Yeah, the Schlitter, as he said. The Schlitter.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was really a brain box. Stuff I never knew, like why, not only that the Schlitter's yellow, but they physically scan the Schlitter now with mobile phones to make sure it's an official one before a match. Oh, brilliant.
That is mad.
Technology, man.
Because it was a totally unregulated thing. So teams had their own favourite Schlitters, and depending on the weight of them, the distance they could travel was totally different, and score lines were all over the place with the inconsistency in the balls. So, yeah, standardized Schlitter, classic brainstorm idea.
It's the Irish, and we were doing it long before Tom Brady and Deflategate in the NFL.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That got all the headlines. Meanwhile, inter-county hurling was up to all kind of shenanigans.
Oh, brilliant, lads. Thanks again for today. Really enjoyed that.
It's been a pleasure, man.
Donal Fallon, thank you so much as always.
No doubt there'll be lots of history to talk about next time.
Great to catch up with Donal Fallon once again. Always a pleasure. And again, like we talked to him for well over an hour there, and we could have kept talking.
I love the sound of his voice. I've always said that.
Yeah, his Three Castles Burning is the podcast, and if you haven't checked it out, check it out, because you'll find it's brilliant. The episodes are 30 minutes long thereabouts. So they're just a nice length, and
they're perfect.
You'll find yourself, once you listen to one, it flows into another and another, and just he is a treasure, is Donal, and wish him nothing but the best. That's it for this week. I'm ripping the headphones off myself here. Sorry. Mero I do. I want to give a quick plug to something. I should have done this at the start of it. Sorry, man. Right. There are two Borough lads, local enough, who are rowing across the Atlantic.
What?
Kev and Rob's Atlantic Row. On Instagram, if you just go Kev and Rob's Atlantic Row, all one word, you'll find them. Rob Collins and Kev O'Farrell. And they're nearly there. They've been doing updates and whatever. Their boat has solar power, which is nearly gone on them. So they're down to the bare bones of it, but they've nearly made it across the Atlantic. Well worth looking at their journey. They're doing fundraising as well, which is brilliant, all for a great cause. It's Muscle Dystrophy Ireland. Pop on over, give them a quick look, and support them if you can. An amazing endeavour. So somewhere South America is where they'll be landing. That's where they'll be making sure.
Unreal.
Yeah, crazy. So fair play to the two lads, and if you can, check it out on Instagram and give them a follow. And if you can throw them a few quid for their incredible achievement, do. I'm sure when they make land, it'll be big news. I'm sure people will be hearing about it all over the place, especially around the border. So, yeah, fair play to Kev and Rob. Well done. Mero, that's it for this week. If people want to listen to the previous episode of the podcast, how can they do it?
They can go to WTSpod.com and stream it, or they can go to any podcast provider, such as Podcast Republic, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, and just search WTS Pod anywhere and everywhere you can get a podcast. He's at Danjo Murray on Twitter. I'm at Merrigan Mania on Twitter. And until next time,
your eyes,
full hearts can't lose.